Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so happy you were able to join us again today because I have a very special guest with a new topic. Her name is Beth Sandlin, and I'm going to read her bio. She is a holistic Pilates teacher with over 20 years of experience, and having faced grief in different ways, she has learned to channel the pain into healing and self-discovery, including the transition to being a Pilates teacher. Beth Sandlin merges her passion for Pilates health and trauma-informed practices, aiming to uncover the joy and beauty in each day through movement. And as the founder of Trifecta Pilates, she offers a wide range of online Pilates classes through YouTube and the Trifecta Pilates app, bringing Pilates into homes worldwide, emphasizing the importance of moving in alignment with your nervous system. I truly believe this story and the insights that you're going to provide today will give inspiration and hope to my listeners about their own self-discovery and their own growth. So I appreciate you taking the time today so much for doing this.
Oh, and I'm so thrilled to be here because I feel like any type of movement, Pilates or otherwise, is so valuable. I'm glad we have a chance today specifically to focus on Pilates.
Yeah. And I love the fact that I have relatively no experience with it. I mean, I've heard of it. And so this is a great opportunity for us to have a discussion, just like, you're working with a blank slate here. So you can tell me all about Pilates and the benefits of it all and how it helped you. So let's just start with your journey and just a little bit about how you have embraced this process of grief and how you've moved through and how Pilates has helped you.
Yeah. So I came to Pilates shortly after my cancer diagnosis at age 20. So during my initial cancer treatment, did not know what Pilates was. I was working out prior to cancer. And then after my kind of inpatient chemotherapy and treatment that I had was released, and like, oh, for the next 2 years, you're going to have maintenance therapy. And during this 2 year period is when I started taking Pilates. And what I recognized is it felt somewhat similar to working out, but a little bit more inquisitive, much more personalized, felt more beneficial and empowering. And when someone experiences cancer, this is my experience anyways, and for a lot of people I know who have experienced cancer, it's very disempowering because there's a lot you can't do. There's a lot of concerns with not only the cancer that someone has, but then you layer on top all the medications that we go on, and there's, contraindications with that. And should we move? Shouldn't we move? There's a lack oftentimes of feeling like we have energy to move. And so going into a movement system in which there's a lot of different options just feels amazing. And it unwinds a lot of tension as well. And over the years, that inspired me to become a Pilates teacher. And for a long time, it really stayed as just a physical workout. And it wasn't until actually the loss of my father that I had more of an understanding of the power of movement as a way to process rather than staying stagnant. And so there's been times, which is why I love sometimes having a personal practice at home, because maybe in a studio setting or you go to a gym and take Pilates, you don't feel as comfortable crying in front of other people. I want you to know it's totally normal that people cry in Pilates and yoga, just what happens when we move our bodies oftentimes. But at home, it felt even more safe. Like there was no one around. I wasn't going to disturb a class at all. And I could really follow that intuition. And sometimes it was just take a break from the movement and allow myself the time to heal and feel. And during that time is when I started learning more about trauma overall, the grief cycle from personal experience. And when I rewound time, I was like, oh, well, that's why so many times I wasn't really motivated to work out, is because when I first started, it was more from a physical conditioning perspective. I'm going to do variations, but I still want the workout to be challenging. And in my 20s, that was suitable. for me, what I needed.
Right.
And then my 30s hit, and it wasn't always in alignment, and understanding more about how to move compassionately with myself, embrace it. I don't always feel like that challenging workout just really opened the door to the benefits of movement from a physical perspective, a nervous system perspective, and also I would say from a healing perspective. And this is what a lot of people I work with experience as well. That first they get into it because they're intrigued by Pilates, like sure, it's a good core workout, and they experience it so much more than that. And then it transforms into a support system that they didn't even know was there, and how valuable that is.
You said so many great things in in that time. And one of the things that I learned early on was, and we talk about this all the time, is how to release all of that emotion that's coming up, whatever we're going through. I mean, it's not only grief, it's life. We always have those emotions coming up in certain circumstances and challenges that we need to go through. And then how do we release that? Because we often hang on to it. And I love this idea of being able to do movement and move it through that. And it seems like there might be some similarities with yoga. But tell me a little bit more about Pilates, why you would choose it over some of the other modalities that we would use to move energy.
One is because it really is about more movement than just stretching. So even though yoga can be a very physically demanding practice, and I am certified to teach yoga as well, there's just something innately different about Pilates. And for a lot of people I work with, they've tried yoga and it just wasn't what their body really resonated with. So there's so many different types of movement that we can do. And I encourage people to focus on, well, if you didn't like one type of movement, well, just let's try another one. And for a lot of people, Pilates is a match because it seems to be a blend between really mindfully moving and taking the opportunity sometimes to do something much more challenging, turning up that dial of intensity when it makes sense. Another element that I really appreciate about it is the mobility that we can get. And I'll talk about mobility twofold. One, from a physical conditioning standpoint, we know that as we get older, mobility tends to decrease just because of our day in and day out activities. We don't tend to move in really diverse ways. When we also think of the grief process, that usually is a more of an immobilized state where we kind of shelter into ourselves, brace somewhat as well. And so not going right into just postures where there's a lot of stillness, inviting movement into the spine, into the body in different ways can be really beneficial. It doesn't have to be really intense. It can be much more slow and subtle, which is why I like to focus on, everywhere from very restorative workouts to more power-based workouts, giving people the autonomy to choose the type of movement that's beneficial. And what we also know from a nervous system perspective is that this movement through the spine that we've always focused on in Pilates, the movement in the neck as well that we like to emphasize, is really beneficial to move through the body, to move through our feelings and emotions. And often the reason why people are like holding it together, and they
Yeah.
start moving with Pilates, there's just a release, is because we're finally able to move. And sometimes, and I was like this in the beginning, like, I'm just going to keep holding it together, keep holding it together. And let me tell you, that's not really living life. And I
Mhm.
mentioned that the loss of my dad actually helped me connect more into the Pilates method. And he was about enjoying life and living life. And yes, I went through a grieving process with him. And I had to get to a point where I no longer want to mourn in this way. I want to take what he taught me throughout my life, and what honestly I was very resistant to when I was younger and he was alive, of having that fulfillment, having the joy, kind of letting go a little bit more
Mhm.
and use that more fully. And that actually informed how I move with Pilates, not having it, needing it to be so perfect all the time, but following more of, I would say, some freedom, find some ease. And that truly for me is honoring his legacy. Now, do I
Mhm.
still sometimes grieve him? Of course, I feel like that comes back sometimes, but I also know that it has become shorter over the years, and I'm more into, oh, I was so happy that I was able to be there with him for a long time. He was able to be there with me. And now I've transcended to, and now I'm living what he was teaching me.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful because that's what I feel too. You move into that space of gratitude for what you had, the connection that you had, the relationship that you had. And yes, there are bouts of sadness here and there. But it's not anything like that initial grief that when you're first trying to release all of that emotion. And you mentioned something about, holding it together. And I think
Mm.
that's another big piece because in society, we always tell each other, you need to be strong, you need to, you know, be strong for your family, all of that kind of stuff. And actually, we get accolades for being strong, for being, doing all the things and carrying out in life. And people will say, oh, you're doing so well. And yet, that whole time, and as my coach explained to me, you're holding that beach ball of emotion under the water and you're hanging on to it and you're hanging on to it. And one day it's going to come up and it's going to be big. And I remember having these huge, well, when I cried, it wasn't just a cry, it was like an explosion of emotion because I had been holding it so much. So I love the idea of having, a practice like this and for people in grief for sure. And then as a daily practice, because we've always got emotions that are coming up to be released. I love that.
Yeah. And it's interesting you use the word strong because that's how many people identify with me. Of you're so strong, Beth, to have gone through cancer at the age of 20. Wow. Like they kind of, I felt like put me on a pedestal where I was like, that's simply what I had to do. There was another option, but for me to
Yeah.
be here today, that is the path I needed to take. And just recently, I came to more peace with the word strong, where actually strong is also my understanding of it, is showing people who I truly am and being in that vulnerable state, which for years was like, nope, I'm just going to hold it all together, like we were mentioning. And so now I have a different relationship, I'd say more positive relationship with it. And while I was grieving my father, my kids were very young. And I didn't, I held back somewhat from them, but not fully. I knew I didn't want to mask fully. And my older daughter, who was talking at the time, my younger daughter was still an infant, so couldn't talk. She told someone, my mom is just so sad right now. And I think that's also a beautiful gift that we can give to other people, our family, letting them see our full emotions and knowing that I didn't stay stuck in that sadness, but that it's okay to feel that way and what do we do with that? So that's something that over the years I've really tried to set an example in a positive way for my children, not only through grief process in different ways, but also it links to movement. It's why I go down to move, that sometimes now they'll say, oh, are you just going down to move your body? And I'm like, yeah. And it's not always about a workout because for years I haven't termed it in a negative way, but I've related to it in different ways. Sometimes it's a workout, other times it's, oh, I just need to go move my body a little bit or go outside for a walk. And so it's really nice that I can share that not only with people who work with me, but also more closely my family.
Yeah. And it's beautiful how, you've come to that realization and that you're expressing that with your kids. And, so they're going to grow up with that and they're going to have those tools because it's what I feel like was really missing because of the way we were brought up. It's nobody's fault. It's just the way society is. And it's changing. It's changing. I truly believe it is changing, but it has been a bit of a journey just trying to figure out what to do with all of that emotion and how I can, how we can get so we're just not stuck in it and we don't even know we're stuck in it. That's the worst part. I mean, like you say, you're holding it together. You're only feeling the emotions in this mediocre kind of world. And when you allow those to release and you allow yourselves to feel the true joy and the true sadness, then that just it colors your world. It's completely different.
It really is. And as you were speaking, it was reminding me of so often with the feel good emotions, we are praised for those.
Yeah.
And then for the stuff that doesn't feel good, it's like, hold back your tears, hold it together. We don't talk like that. Even anger, like we can be angry sometimes. And sometimes it's perfectly like that is the warranted response for what is going through and the situation at hand. And it, even from a young age, like, oh, you're a good girl because you listen and you're quiet, and nope, you're being bad because you're crying or whatever other action you're taking. And we layer this on to how we are in adulthood. And also, I would say that the emotions that we don't necessarily want to feel, like, I don't want to be crying all day long. Like, I don't want to be stuck in that sadness. Like, I have felt that, how do I get out of this? How do I escape? But here's what I know to be true is when I don't label emotions good or bad when I'm experiencing, but just embrace where I am and move with that more compassionately and know that this will pass. But if I found the more I try to push it away, the
Mhm.
louder and louder it becomes. It's like pushing against the resistance. When I just embrace, okay, yes, I'm not feeling great. Well, what can I do with that? And maybe just embracing ourselves or doing a really gentle movement practice or even journaling. There's a lot of options that's moves us through it more quickly, even if our intention is not to move through it quickly. I found just being in the present is really beneficial. And this even goes to how we move, that sometimes we so just want, I just want that good workout in. And many times that's why we're not motivated to work out, because we may be in a spot where our nervous system is not ready for something very energizing. That sympathetic nervous system response needs to be on board with those challenging workouts. But if we're in a spot where we're in a more parasympathetic response, then maybe it makes sense to do something a little bit more gentle, a little bit more soothing. Can workouts shift our nervous system up a little bit? Yeah, but think about going from like 0 to 10, or say 1 to 10, maybe would be more realistic. In one workout may not be beneficial. Maybe it's just 1 to 3. And that's where the soothing sessions can be really helpful for people, the gentle movements.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. You touched on so many amazing things. And really, I love the message that you're giving here because it's like embracing all the emotions, not just the ones that we consider the best emotions. And I always found that as soon as I allowed myself to embrace whatever sadness I was feeling, or the anger, or the jealousy, a lot of people are saying, oh, I'm trying not to be jealous. Well, why? Why not just be jealous? Because you are, right? And as soon as you embrace that and you allow yourself to feel that, I feel like that's when it releases. And once you do that a couple of times, you realize that uh, it's not it's about embracing it. It's not about pushing it away. And it's not easy because we've been doing this our whole lives. We've been pushing it away our whole lives. So I love how you reinforce that. And I love the way it sounds like Pilates can be all of this, right? So it can be that good workout that maybe some of us are not interested in, but then it can be this beautiful movement that can really help us release some of that emotion at the same time. Yeah, because it's not for everybody to just sit with it. I do that sometimes, just sit and allow it to release, but sometimes we need a little extra. And I think that movement really makes a difference. Well, I know it does because I've used
Yeah.
it in other ways. Yeah.
And that's something, since you brought it up, it's not always about a workout, it can be something else, that sometimes it is even, I'm very intentional. This is a workout, like, and I'm ready for it. There's other times where it's been I'm focusing just on really nourishing and soothing movement experiences. Yeah, I can talk all about the physical benefits of this for the body as well, but my primary goal is more for that nervous system regulation. And I found that when people tune into that, how are you feeling after that movement session? And if you're feeling better, that may be just an indicator of, oh, well, then next time you're feeling kind of that same way, would it be helpful for you to do another session like this? And sure, it could be an hour-long session. There's times when hour-long is a beautiful experience. And there's other times when 10 minutes will do. And I found, playing with the time, playing with the intensity is so amazing for us. And for people who I've worked with, they found that all of a sudden that they're using and moving with Pilates more. And at the same time, the pressure comes off of what they should do for movement and workouts. There's more enjoyment with it. And for people who have experienced grief, people who have worked with the loss of their partner, people who are right now experiencing cancer themselves, that they're playing with this like oscillation of when does it make sense to have something more challenging and when does it make sense to have something much more restorative, and taken off, I would say, the toxic lens that so often accompanies workouts. They always must be challenging to be beneficial. And all of a sudden, they're noticing so many more benefits that filter far beyond just that one movement session.
Yeah. Yeah. And that whole phrase, no pain, no gain, comes to into my mind, and it feels so wrong.
That one really is wrong.
Yeah. And I love how, it's encouraging people, or you're encouraging people to kind of feel into what would be right for them and to try that. And then if it feels good, you're going to naturally want to do it again, right? Like once you figure out what's working for you, um, that's beautiful. So tell people, a little bit more about what you offer.
Yeah. So workouts, yeah, you can come and just focus on the workouts, but what I really focus on is finding the movement journey and experience and taking time to explore what are your movement patterns, where are you holding maybe extra tension, where can you breathe into more, stretch more, move a little bit more, or find a more easefulness with your practice. Many times, even with challenging Pilates exercises, the tendency is to push through. And I'm very familiar with this because this was my go-to. Oh, those challenging exercises, I'm going to do them, like just power through them. And what I realized is they push back against me. And I was never able to make progress because in Pilates, there's a balance between effort and ease. It's one of the beautiful aspects of Pilates, and it can be really humbling at times as well. So sometimes I really like to focus more on that easeful approach, because if we're holding extra tension, whether it's just because of our movement patterns or because we're holding on to extra emotions, such as the mid to low back is a really common place for a lot of people, it's gonna feel even more challenging to move with Pilates. So there's, I would say, a balance between learning, about the Pilates exercises and also your own body. Like what makes sense for you? Where do you tend to hold tension? Does that mean that we're going to take a few extra breaths at the beginning of class, or for a period of time focus on something a little bit more nourishing for the body and less workout oriented, so that we can reset the tension patterns, maybe find more ease, and then turn up the dial of intensity. So always playing with these different options, going back and forth, the physical, the nervous system, the emotional, and notice how that influences how we think, how we feel. And this process takes time. There is no one path. And so one element I really encourage people to do is lean in with curiosity. So even people who have moved with Pilates for many years, like I have, when they come to work with me, they start to recognize very clearly, I'm not just about the workouts, that we have restorative, connect, flow, and power. And these all go with our different energetic states. And what it helps people recognize is oh, well, on a higher energy day, if I'm feeling good, maybe I reserve that for a power workout. But if I'm wanting something, maybe it's a recovery workout, or maybe I'm lower on energy, or there's something else going on emotionally, maybe it makes more sense to do that connect style. And that kind of oscillation back and forth is really amazing. And over time, people move better with Pilates. But what I really like is when they come back and say, oh my gosh, like I'm able to get down and up off the floor with
Mm.
more ease. I just feel better. I have more energy at the end of the day because sure, I think it's great to like feel like with like 100 exercise or teaser that we're making physical strength and progress with that. But if our practice only ever stays on the mat, most likely eventually will trickle off because we live a life far beyond just the workouts that we do. And the workouts we do filter back into our life. And we also have to respect that our life is going to influence our workouts. And that's something I've just been kind of ruminating on more recently is many times I feel like people who are the loudest in the exercise space, many times, not all, I want to say that, loudest in the exercise space don't live the life that I live, which is a mom. I've experienced grief. Maybe they haven't had that. I've had cancer in the past. And so it's not that they don't live a real life, but their real life is so different than mine, the no pain, no gain mentality. Oh, we all have 24 hours in the same day. So of course you can do an hour-long workout. Well, what we have to do in that same 24 hours is much different. And sometimes that is ignored. And it's meant to be motivating, but I found for me, it's been personally demotivating. So I like to go deep into what are those nuances and can we go into rather with, I don't have time for the hour-long workout, so I just can't work out. Would an evening session make sense for you? Oh, you're not a night owl. I use that example because I'm a night owl, so that's what I default to. You're an early bird. Would a 10-minute wake-up session be helpful for you to incorporate movement? So a lot of flexibility and I would say adaptations to have it make sense for where we are in this present moment to really benefit us overall.
Yeah, I like that. So do you work one-on-one and with groups, or how do you work?
Mm. So I do teach people privately. I really reserve those sessions for people who are currently in the membership and app, because then I can point them to resources and classes that are available there. But I encourage people, rather than feeling like you have to right away have a private session, sometimes that's warranted, but many times I've found for people that starting with a foundations series, which we have in the membership, is helpful to start that self-exploration of what's beneficial. So we have different programs and series, foundations to Pilates for beginners to more intermediate and advanced level programs, so that people are learning more about their body and what makes sense for them. Because this is what I've found is that a lot of times if someone is only ever following exactly what their personal trainer or private Pilates teacher is saying, they're not really learning the tools of what makes sense to them and how to make that adjustment. And I can't tell you how many people I've talked to. It's, oh, I used to have a consistent workout program, but then my personal trainer or my Pilates teacher left. And so it just kind of fell off. Well, one, there's so many amazing movement teachers out there. We can try to find another one. But if we start to work more with, okay, even if I'm attending a private session, how can I incorporate movement into my day? And this is something when I was working with people consistently twice a week, it would be beneficial to supplement with shorter Pilates sessions where it's not a workout, but just overall movement. So I encourage people, unless you need to start with a private one-on-one session, and maybe some indicators of that are you just came out of physical therapy. And so there's some very specific nuances that would be helpful to translate into how you're going to move with the Pilates method. But for most people, I've found starting with one of the programs within the membership is a great way to start. And then attending our live sessions, our Q&A can supplement the questions that people have along the way. And then when it makes sense, we layer on working individually.
Wow. And tell me more about the app.
Yeah, so that started after we formed the membership. The people were really enjoying the deeper classes that we have within the membership. There's exercise tutorials as well. But the one thing they were missing is that they weren't able to kind of take this on the go with them. And what I mean by that is if they go on vacation, having a class where they didn't necessarily need an internet connection. So the app allows people to download classes, which is really convenient. And once people move through a few different Pilates series, and most of the series are about like a week long, maybe 2 weeks long, maybe they move through the level 1 calendar, which is a bridge between beginner level exercises and then level 1 classes. They're starting to realize like, oh, I have a lot of favorite classes. They're marking favorite classes in the app. Is I then encourage people to stop following the calendar per se or a program and start layering on what makes sense for you right now. And a lot of people, I would say, takes about 6 months to a year to get that. They like kind of following structure, but they're starting to realize, oh, well, Beth planned an hour-long class on Monday. My Mondays are packed. That just doesn't make sense for me. So what can I do in substitution for that? So we work with more of rather than just follow exactly along. And if you can't do it, oh, well, it's, well, if you can't do it, what is your swap? What makes sense? And so most people find that as they're in the app more, the longer that they're in it, they're finding those go-to options and resources. And sometimes they'll move with the workout and be like, I don't need to move with that one again. Other times it's, oh yeah, I definitely want to move with that class again. And it's really exciting to see people embracing this rather than just staying so rigid to one way. Because I've found not only for myself, but other people, when we stay so stuck with that one way, that's when we fall off of, I can't work out because I don't have the time. I don't have that equipment. It doesn't make sense. And so we work from a more, well, what can you do? What makes sense for you in this time period? And we know from a personal experience that can change very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This has been amazing. So how do people get a hold of you? We'll definitely put a link in the description, but
the best way would be to check out some classes on YouTube if you're wanting to get started right away. You can find detailed information, everything from the membership and app to teacher training programs on our website at trifectapilates.com.
okay. And why trifecta?
I love this question. I sat with it for a long time, and it was because it really is a integrated approach that it's not just about the body. So trifecta means body, mind, and spirit. And we must consider all of these when we move with Pilates. From my personal journey and from clients who I've worked with, when we just focused on the physical benefits of working out, it got us only so far. And then all of a sudden it was no longer important. It didn't make sense. Time got in the way. We say we lacked motivation, but that's because we weren't considering, our mind, our brain health as well. And where was our energy, our spirit? So it really is kind of everything that we've talked about today. Yeah, we can focus on the physical, but if we tune in instead, I would say instead, in addition with our nervous system, which has, I know, not been talked a lot about with workouts, I found that is the key to really a sustainable workout program and honors where we are individually, not just from a physical conditioning standpoint, but what's going to be most helpful for the entire essence of who we are. And why I leaned into this even more is because I've worked with so many people in the field of trauma. They're more like therapists and therapeutic settings now, and they started out in the movement field. And what they said is like, I just had to give it up because so many people, like they were seeing progress and then they just kind of stopped. And what I realized is it was the nervous system. This is their words, not mine. And so they just kind of left workouts to the wayside. And now
Yeah.
they're focusing more on, trauma recovery from a different perspective. And I don't want to leave it because it is so powerful just for how we feel, how we age. And so I like to bring them together. And I think that for people who take the time to explore this and move with it, all of a sudden it's, oh, I get to move my body today. I get to go to Pilates class rather than, oh, it's on my list. It's another thing that I have to do. And it becomes so enjoyable. And at the same time, I want to share this. I just got this email from someone who's in the membership, is that the pressure comes off because part of a consistent workout program is being okay with taking time off sometimes. And she was saying how she just took a few weeks off. She went on vacation and instead she was doing more tourist activities like walking and going on biking tours and just getting back to the mat. And with this approach of understanding it's not just about workouts, but honoring body, mind, and spirit and honoring and respecting your lives. She wasn't stressed about not, doing her workouts. She typically does when she's not vacationing. I
Mhm.
thought, oh, how beautiful that she's experienced this and is now embodying this. And what's even more amazing is she can share this with others. And I
Mhm.
think the more that we experience this and share this with others, it just comes back to us as well, the benefits.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Well, I absolutely have loved this time with you. And I know that a lot of people are going to want to check out what you do and maybe try some Pilates if we haven't. Or if you've tried Pilates and you haven't found it working, I'm thinking maybe this might be your key. You might need to try this trifecta approach. And yeah, so I would encourage you to look up Beth and to see what she has to offer. So thank you again for everything.
You're welcome, and thank you so much.
All right. And thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.